down. Robert Vaughn and David McCallum star in NBC TV's Man from U.N.C.L.E. 56, Disneyland Records debuts its first record, the soundtrack of Song of the South. The songs from that soundtrack include Uncle Remus Said, How Do You Do, and The Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. And from this time in 1974, a man is seen streaking across the stage of The Tonight Show on NBC TV. It's later revealed the guy is one of Carson's writers. Pat McCormick, streaking here in 1974, has become a fad on college campuses.
Well, yes, they call him the street. Look at that, fastest thing on 2 feet.
With more at manfromyesterday.com.
From the Bureau of Economic Geology, this is Earth Date. When did our ancestors leave the trees and begin to lead a life on solid ground? Some real-life CSI has given us a big clue. Lucy, the 3-million-year-old skeleton of one of our oldest known human relatives, was recently on a museum tour of the United States. During her visit, University of Texas scientists examined her skeleton with geological CT scanners, similar to medical CAT scans, but with higher resolution. Fossil bones often break as they're buried, but Lucy's upper arm showed something unusual. It was compressed, with sharp fracture lines and tiny bone fragments intact. The team called in an orthopedic surgeon who confirmed that this injury in modern humans only occurs when they extend their arms to try to break a fall from considerable height. So they began to look for other fracture evidence of a fall and found it in her ankle, knee, pelvis, and ribs. They then looked to modern chimpanzees, which are about the same size as Lucy. Chimps nest in trees at heights of up to 35 feet, high enough that a fall could result in the same type and degree of fracturing found in Lucy. Further studies using the CT
KCAA Loma Linda. The Legacy KCAA 1050 AM and Express 106.5 FM.
I'm Jessica Ettinger, CNBC. Wall Street, mixed and flattish this morning. After yesterday's mixed day for the markets, investors are still weighing 2 days of testimony on Capitol Hill by Fed Chairman Jay Powell, where he warned that interest rates are likely going higher and staying there for longer until inflation is handled. Investors also sort of on hold for tomorrow's big February employment report from the Labor Department. More people applied for unemployment benefits last week than expected, but 2 other jobs reports out this week show a very strong job market, historically strong openings in January, and more private sector jobs created in February than expected. Norfolk Southern's CEO is on the hot seat today on Capitol Hill. Alan Shaw will be grilled by a Senate committee over the railroad's 4 train derailments in the past 5 months. Tom Love, the billionaire founder of Love's Travel Stops, has died. He was 85. Jessica Ettinger, CNBC.
Attention. Per the current government mandate, U.S.-based insurers are now required to cover at-home COVID testing kits with no out-of-pocket fees to you. If you have a current insurance plan, you are eligible to receive up to 8 COVID-19 tests shipped to you each month absolutely free, as long as the government mandate is in effect. Just visit testkitforfree.com to register now from the comfort of your own home. That's testkitforfree.com to receive your tests shipped to you at no cost. Go to testkitforfree.com today. Paid for by T. Euro Health.
Lanny went to college and racked up huge debt.
A little bit over $100,000.
For a degree he couldn't use? Now what?
I had a friend that went to my computer career and they talked to me about it.
He was done in just months.
I did do it online.
They even helped him get hired immediately after graduation.
One of the things I love about IT is that you can work from anywhere you want.
You could become an IT pro in just months with zero experience at My Computer Career.
It worked for me and I know it can work for you.
It's not rocket science. It's mycomputercareer.edu.
NBC News Radio, I'm Lisa Taylor. The CEO of Norfolk Southern says he's determined to make things right following the toxic train derailment in Ohio.
Norfolk Southern will clean the site safely, thoroughly, and with urgency.
While testifying before a Senate panel, CEO Alan Shaw said he was deeply sorry for the impact the derailment has had on the residents of East Palestine and surrounding communities. The hearing came as another Norfolk Southern train derailed in eastern Alabama, but there are no reported injuries or leaks. The bodies of 2 Americans who died after a kidnapping in Mexico last week will be returned to the U.S. today. An autopsy was performed in Mexico, and a second autopsy will be done after the transfer is complete. 2 other Americans were found alive outside Matamoros on Wednesday and were brought to a Brownsville, Texas hospital. Tiger Woods' ex-girlfriend is accusing him of tricking her into leaving his Florida home and locking her out after she left. Erica Herman filed to toss out a non-disclosure agreement she signed in 2017 when they first started dating. Lisa Taylor, NBC News Radio.
One of the best ways to build a healthier local economy is by shopping locally. Teamster Advantage is a shop local program started by Teamster Local 1932 that has brought together hundreds of locally owned businesses to provide discounts for residents who make shopping locally their priority. Everything from restaurants like Corky's to fun times at SB Raceway and much, much more. If you're not currently a Teamster and you want access to these local business discounts, contact Jennifer at 909-889-8377, extension 224. Give her a call. That number again is 909-889-8377, extension 224.
Are you underpaid and overworked? Is a living wage and employee benefits like affordable health care more of a dream than a reality for you and your family? If so, it's time to form a union. Don't be denied the wages and benefits you deserve. Come together in a union with the power of numbers. A union is not a privilege, it's your right, and it will make a difference. Contact Teamsters Local 1932, a powerful and successful labor union in San Bernardino, by visiting Teamsters1932.org/organize to start today.
Are you graduating high school soon and wondering what to do next? College is one option, but why not consider the high-paying jobs made possible by union power? Labor Union Teamsters Local 1932 has opened a training center to get you into the high school to high-paying job pipeline. You'll learn all the skills needed to excel in opportunities across industries. Visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org.
Labor unions built the middle class, and the middle class built America. That's the message from Teamsters Local 1932, a strong and successful labor union based in San Bernardino that represents over 14,000 hardworking people across the Inland Empire. The Teamsters are ready to help you organize for better pay, increased benefits, and improved working conditions. Reach out to Teamsters 1932 at teamsters1932.org/organize to speak with an organizer today.
Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Big news today. Michigan. Yes, Michigan, looking at you. They have moved to repeal their no rights at work legislation. It's out of the House, going to the Senate, moving on a promise that they made to voters in Michigan in 2022 that they would repeal the horrible right to work law that Republicans rammed through like thieves in the night a little over a decade ago. And again, I look at when Republicans did this, like thieves in the night. It's my number one reason why I'm against term limits. Because a good number of the people who voted for this horrible legislation back in 2012 were people who were term limited out and they were looking for a job. So it was the payoff. You vote for this no rights at work. You take this ability of workers to fight for better wages, hours, conditions away, and we'll give you a soft landing spot. All you got to do is vote for this lovely sounding piece of legislation. Because who could possibly be against someone's right to work? Who could be against that? And yet we know no rights, no work, and not only that, lower wages, less benefits, and less safe. As one of the proponents of the legislation pointed out, that since Michigan went this horrible direction, wages are down 13% And injuries at work are up 50%. Also, union membership has fallen from the fifth highest in the country down to 12th. And that was always the plan. That's the idea of these no rights at work schemes. It's to lower the number of people who have the ability to collectively bargain. Because what they like, again, it's about separating the sheep. It's about separating we the working people, because it's easier to negotiate and get your will over one or two, but not the entire facility, which is why collective bargaining works and why it has to be broken. Now, I love the right to work folks' arguments. No, we're not anti-union. No, we wouldn't do that. We're for choice. And yet you see time and time again, because they understand where the power is. The power is in the moneyed interests. The power is in if you look at Pennsylvania's workers' compensation law, it still refers to the employer-employee relationship as a master-servant relationship. So understand where their thinking is. They know where the power is. They know where the money is. It's certainly not the workers. So this is a huge, to steal a Joe Biden, this is a BFD. This is a big freaking deal. Finally, Democrats going, we're gonna do it. Virginia's still mad at you. But we'll see if it gets through the Senate, and I believe it will, and I believe the governor will sign it, and we will see one of these horrible pieces of legislation go down. And look, we need to do this across the country to give workers the ability to collectively bargain for better wages, hours, conditions. Now, the moneyed interest, they're not going to go softly. They're not going to go quietly into that good night. In fact, billionaire Betsy DeVos, you may remember her, Trump's education secretary, and some of the other moneyed interests of Michigan, they're rattling the sabers a little bit, saying that they may petition for a drive to let the voters decide. Now, because they're playing on, voters didn't want to add collective bargaining rights to their constitution. It failed in that vote. So they're taking this going, see, they don't want it. I think now is the time, especially after the shutdown, especially after you see the massive disparity in wages between the billionaire Betsies of the world and all the people who actually go out and do the work. It's going to be an interesting moment. And the reason I bring this up today, good news today, Bernie Sanders, chairman of the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, the HELP Committee. I love the fact that Bernie's the chair of this. And one of the great quotes that came out of Sanders today was, there is a class war going on whether we want to recognize it or not. And I tend to recognize it. Yeah, I can, you go back to the quote attributed to Jay Gould, I could easily pay half the working class to murder the other half. And that was what kind of played out in this hearing today. As you had a couple of, you had the right to work guy there from on one side. You had I think a chamber guy, if I'm not mistaken. And then you had Mary Kay Henry from SEIU, Liz Schuler from the AFL-CIO, and Sean O'Brien from the Teamsters, which O'Brien got all of the headlines today because much of the attention was focused on him and the exchange between him and Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin. And look, I want to get into that, but the most important quote that came out of it is O'Brien said, when an employer, be they rail carriers, package companies, or coffee shops, gets away with repeated abuse of American workers, the legislators who let it happen are complicit in these crimes. And I've been saying this for the longest time. Look, these companies have been getting away, literally, with committing crimes daily. And honestly, and I said this the other day, if I'm advising a company on how to break their union, it would be malpractice to not have them break the law. It would be malpractice to say, no, don't not fire someone. That's wrong. It's bad. No, the law is so weak, the teeth are so grinded down to nubs that it doesn't matter. The penalties are non-existent. And this is what O'Brien and the others were saying. Look, we need major comprehensive labor law reform. We need real teeth in organizing. Now, what I loved, oh boy, every Republican who stepped up there was, we're not against unions. No. It's the same. Understand what the right line is. The Republican, the conservative, the right-leaning, the anti-worker line is always the same. Whether it's a guy in Michigan, whether it's their no rights at work guy, whether it's Mix, the national no rights at work guy, no matter, or a senator on the help committee, it's all the same. We're not anti-union. No. We just believe in competition, and we want people to have choice. And yet you see that the choice that they get is to be harassed, intimidated, browbeaten, sometimes fired. And again, we've seen these high-profile cases, which are not new. This stuff's been going on for decades, but we're finally paying attention to it. And this hearing is a pretty big deal in that finally someone in our government is bringing it up. Is it going to go anywhere? I doubt it. But it's important to keep bringing this stuff up and important to keep talking about it in a way that workers see someone fighting for them. Look, the thing I loved most of all about this hearing was the fact that O'Brien was not going to back down from Markwayne Mullin. Mullin was talking, when they come after me, I encourage, physical this or that. I'm going to take him on because he thinks he's Billy, bad, what. And O'Brien didn't back down, and good on him. It's about time working people have a little swagger. It's about time that working people man up and say, you know what, we're not going to back down. We're not going to take it on the chin anymore. We're going to stand up and fight. And I love the fact that O'Brien, while he didn't have any facts in front of him, he wasn't wrong. He pointed out that CEOs are getting away with, millions of dollars, and they're hiding money. And he pointed it back at Markwayne Mullin, who is a really rich guy, and said, well, how much do you make? Because Mullin tried to go after him for what he makes as the union president. Now, we can argue whether $195,000 a year for a union president is too much. I don't think so. But we can argue whether that's too much in this day and age, especially when you look at, you got some UPS drivers who are making $100,500. Now, Mullin said, well, you've got these feeder drivers who are making $35,000, which not even close to possible. If that's the case, you only worked a couple of months. But wanted to throw this out there to make it look like, well, you got these rich union bosses making $195,000 a year without looking in the mirror. Because here's a guy, according to Tulsa World, which is a news publication out in Oklahoma where Markwayne Mullin's from, they pointed out, looking at the financial disclosures that he put forth as a candidate, that his wealth in 2020 ranged from $7.3 million to $29.9 at the end of 2020. For the last election in 2022, his wealth ranged in the 31.6 to 75.6 million range. Significantly more than the prior 2 years. Now, you go, well, that's because everyone got a little bit wealthier. If you're in the Senate, you obviously know stuff. And why I bring this up is O'Brien said, well, how much do you make? And he said that he made $50,000 a year. And I'm going, how do you build that kind of wealth on $50,000 a year? Now, he says he puts it back into his business because he wants us to believe that he lives like a pauper. I want to know. I now have to see the $50,000 in tax forms. I now have to see the claims that Markwayne Mullin made that his employees make more than union plumbers with better wages, better benefits, better conditions. I now have to see this because, look, if it's true, good on Markwayne Mullin. I haven't seen that often. There have been a few exceptions where that has rung true, but the general rule is union workers make better wages, hours, conditions. That's the general rule. Now, again, you look at some of this stuff. They talked about, why does it always have to be so adversarial? And I've always said it doesn't have to be. Workers don't want it to be adversarial. They want to participate in the company that they work for. They want to put all of their energy, they want to put all of their passion into making that company successful. But it's got to come back to them. I say all the time, the company that I work for, I want them to be as profitable as possible. So that come negotiation time, we see better wages in our pockets too. I want that company to be successful for 100 years so that I can retire and my kids, if they want to work there, can work there, and their kids, and so on. But this right-wing frame that unions want to put companies out of business, again, front and center in the adversarial discussions. And it doesn't have to be this way. There can be a symbiotic relationship where companies are going, yeah, we want the best labor, we want the best product we can get, and the workers are like, yeah, we want to work for a company that treats us well. That should be something that can be somewhat agreed on, but at the end of it, when you start talking about, CEOs and executives and shareholders wanting more and more and more, and this insatiable appetite for more, who gets squeezed? Well, the workers, because they're nothing but a negative on the balance sheet today. And it wasn't always that way. So the question is, how do you get back to a place where it's no longer that adversarial? And I say the more people in unions, the more people across the board who have access to union jobs, the better it's going to be. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Got lots to get to today. Lots on my mind. Back after this. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you find your favorite podcast, you'll grab ours. Back after this.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So lots of email around Schmucker Carlson. Reality, the headlines. It's the end of Tucker Carlson. You had the headline, Fox is effed, by former senior Obama advisor Dan Pfeiffer. And look, this has been the kind of from the left and from the middle, this has been kind of look how bad it is for Fox News. Look at these emails and look at all of this information that's coming out about how they view their viewers as dupes and morons, and how they knew the big lie was a big lie. But as Rupert Murdoch said, they didn't care. It was about the money. It's not about red or blue, right or wrong, black or white, up or down. It's about cash. It's about green. It's about putting it in their pocket. And one of the interesting back and forths that popped up, the exchange between Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, and Tucker Carlson, where Ingraham goes, my anger is at the news channel. It's pronounced. Carlson says, it should be. We devote our lives to building an audience. And they let Chris Wallace and Leland effing Fittert wreck it too much. Hannity says, too much is correct. I'm disgusted at this point. Ingraham, I think the three of us have enormous power. We have more power than we know or exercise together. And they together decided that they were going to, well, continue to lie, continue to push the big lie, while Vittert and Wallace were saying, no, this isn't it. Now, Vittert and Wallace are all gone. They left and went somewhere else because they're actually journalists. I mean, I don't always agree with them, but, you know, they're actually journalists telling the story. And what's come up in the emails that I'm getting from people, and this is the weird thing is, you know, everything's now, you know, did you see Tucker Carlson's video? Did you see the video? They were walking between the ropes. And you knew this was going to happen because Republicans think strategically long term. They think message long term. They understand their base better than we understand anything else. And I was saying at the time when the January 6th committee was coming together and figuring out how they were going to go forward, and Kevin McCarthy said, you know, we're not participating. If you're not going to give us our attack dogs, and this was an excuse more than anything, because they didn't want anyone on that committee. They said, if you don't give us who we want, we can't put our criminals on there, then we're gonna back out. That was a strategic move. Everyone said, oh, it's stupid. You know, they should have done that. No, they knew what they were doing. They didn't want to have to defend January 6th. They didn't want to have to defend Donald Trump. They didn't want to have to defend the base who showed up and defecated on the floor. They didn't want to have to defend the guy urinating on the desk. They didn't want to have to defend the people stabbing policemen with flagpoles. They didn't want to have to do that. They wanted to be able to sanitize that and say, oh, that's just those liberals and those Democrats showing you this stuff. So they got the video. And Tucker Carlson boiled 40,000 hours of video down to a couple minutes, and they found people walking between the velvet ropes. They found people taking pictures. They found people, you know, skipping through the halls. They found people smelling butterflies. They found all kinds of wonderful images out of 40,000 hours of video. And now they're presenting their narrative, as will Kevin McCarthy and the Republicans. Because this isn't about getting to the truth. This isn't about hashing out an argument and really getting down to reality. This is about narrative. This is about storytelling. This is about the green. Because now we see, you know, Kevin McCarthy, we're going to have our probe into January 6th and we'll show you. The difference is Democrats aren't going to be stupid enough to go, no, we're not going to participate. They're going to go in there and fight every day for what Republicans bring up. And this Tucker Carlson video is part of that. The stuff that he's been saying and the narrative that, no, these were good people. It was a picnic day. Understand, January 6th, these folks, they went to Washington, D.C. for one purpose. One purpose was to stop the certification of the presidential election. That was it. They went there with that sole intent. Said it over and over and over again. The crime was we're stopping it. And yeah, were there people doing, you know, park kind of things? Sure. But there were also criminals breaking stuff and doing things that landed them in jail, as it should. But what's interesting to me is the Republican base. And this is the part that I'm interested in, because the base is they're kind of like baby birds. They want their information chewed up and you know, basically dropped into their mouths bit by bit so that they don't have to think about it. Because understand, Fox is a con, and those people are the mark. All the hate, no reward for working people, but what you are doing is you are making the rich richer. And I got this idea today. I was thinking about an old movie. The movie was called A Face in the Crowd. Andy Griffith was the star. He played a character, Lonesome Rhodes, who, you know, good old yokel local, you know, just a good old down to earth, good old boy from Arkansas. And, you know, a woman puts him on the radio, and he gets, it's kind of a hit. People take to him, and his star rises. To eventually he gets on TV, and he's got a huge TV audience, and, you know, all the working people are gathered around the TV, you know, at the bars and at home and at work and all these places to listen to this guy's message, because they think he's one of them. And the end, because at the beginning he is. At the beginning, he's like they are. But as he gets wealthier and more powerful, he turns. He turns on them, like the Fox News has done. And I went and I looked at the final scene, because at the end of this, you see the rise of Andy Griffith's character until the end, where the woman has lost faith in him. She believes in the mission. She believes in the ideology and what he's saying. He doesn't. So at the end, she leaves the microphone potted up so that people can hear what he really thinks. And as the credits are about to roll and they're smiling and waving, and he goes, look at all those morons out there. I could easily take chicken fertilizer and sell it to them as caviar. I could make them eat dog food and they'd think it's steak. Sure, I got them. I got them like this. You know what the public's like, a cage full of guinea pigs. He said, "Good night, you stupid idiots," with a big smile on his face. "Good night, you miserable slobs," smiling like grin ear to ear. There are a lot of trained seals out there, he said. I toss them a dead fish and they flip their flippers. And then they turn to the crowds. And the crowds are like, "Oh, he's a monster. He's horrible." And he turned to the workers, "Oh, he's terrible." And they turn away from him, and he's gone. He's done. He's over. We are not that society. We are not that group of people, because what's coming out should be his Lonesome Roads moment. Should be the moment when every person in this country looks at Tucker Carlson and the rest of them and says, "You're the monster. You're the liar. You gotta go." I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2007. That was the day 7,000 workers at Northrop Grumman, a shipyard company in Pascagoula, Mississippi, went out on strike. Grumman is one of the largest defense contractors in the world. The workers were members of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 733, and the Pascagoula Metal Trades Council. They were still reeling from the ravages of Hurricane Katrina just 2 years earlier. The hurricane had devastated the Mississippi Gulf Coast and sent prices for housing skyrocketing. But while workers suffered, Katrina brought $3 billion in federal contracts to Northrop Grumman to repair hurricane damage. Despite this, Grumman proposed a 4-year contract for the workers with no raises and increased health care costs. For many workers, this did not sit well. They knew the company had received massive government contracts, but still was not willing to treat workers fairly at the bargaining table. The union members rejected the offer and voted to strike. The company came back with a proposal offering small raises, which did not keep pace with the cost of living. The strike was called. For 4 weeks, workers marched and manned the picket lines. During the strike, the company cut off the workers' health care coverage. The company then offered slightly higher wages and reduced the increases to health care coverage. Although the proposal was not enough to keep up with the soaring local cost of living, union members voted to end the strike and accept the offer. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Many of today's right-wing governors and state legislators have a problem by constantly pushing an extremist ideological agenda of nonsense about nutty conspiracy theories while imposing autocratic laws to ban everything from voting to library books. They've become widely ridiculed as some combo of kooky, clownish, and embarrassingly incompetent. That's why it's significant that Missouri's GOP lawmakers have not only recognized their image problem, but have actually made an effort to demonstrate that they are serious-minded public officials concerned about their professionalism. Namely, the State House of Representatives has adopted a dress code. Seriously. Specifically, the attire mandate addresses the pressing state issue of female lawmakers who come to work dressed normally but without jackets. Disapproving legislative leaders clucked that this fashion faux pas was undermining the public's respect for them. But now, says GOP Representative Ann Kelly, sponsor of the new code, quote, it has been fixed. Henceforth, all women legislators in the Show Me state must wear blazers or cardigans in order to, as Kelly explained, always maintain a formal and professional atmosphere in the House. Professional? Excuse me, but these far-right state legislatures totter between being goofy policy forums and carnival sideshows. The only proper attire for many of these so-called legislative leaders would be straitjackets. One lawmaker even claimed that the code was about protecting freedom. The clothing mandate, she explained, eliminates the possibility that the state will be the clothing police. This is Jim Hightower saying, I'm thinking of moving to Missouri. It must be wonderful to live in a state where the government has already fixed all the big problems people really care about, letting the legislative body focus on properly clothing its women members.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the war on the 20th century commences as the governor of Arkansas has signed into law. You know, who needs to verify how old that kid is working in that meat processing plant? You know, we don't really need to know how old they are. You know, we need to get those kids back to work. They're too lazy, you know, playing video games when they should be back in the mines. You know, back, you know, sweeping the bathrooms at school. Get rid of those union janitors. Remember when Newt Gingrich said that? The goal has always been, and again, this is the Inflation Reduction Act for Republicans. We're going to put kids to work so parents can afford to live. Wow, brilliant. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the attacks on children, both from the work standpoint and education front. I've asked Jessica Akers to come talk with us. Jessica is the president of the Arkansas AFL-CIO. Jessica, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Rick.
So Sarah Sanders has decided, you know what? We need cheap labor. We need easy, accessible labor. Let's get those kids back in the workforce.
You know, unfortunately, that's what it's looking like. You know, it's the typical kind of national Republican message of red tape, getting rid of red tape and deregulating everything, making it easier to exploit workers for sure.
Now, what has she done here? I mean, I look at Iowa. Iowa's got a horrible bill. And again, you look across this country, there are a bunch of laws going after child labor laws, which I got to tell you, you know, I never thought would happen. You know, as a parent, I can't imagine going, yeah, we should have kids working on the kill floor of the meat processing plant. Absolutely. And we should give them, you know, give the employers liability shields as long as they can have the cover of the schools. I can't fathom that parents are thrilled with this. So nuts and bolts. What has Sarah Huckabee Sanders signed? What's this going to mean for kids in Arkansas?
So what she signed it today, I do believe. What it did was it removed this work permit that we had in place in Arkansas. As I was doing some research before talking to you, some states have work permits via school, right? But it was through the DOL, a work permit for kids under 16 to work, but it required a parent to sign. It required age verification, and it required the work hours to be disclosed. And the argument was that it was, you know, burdensome on the parents, or burdensome on the state. I don't really exactly know who they were saying it was burdensome on.
It was just burdensome. We know it was burdensome. We don't know who it was burdensome on, but we know.
Right. So we're going to take it away. And you know, the message behind that was, you know, putting the choice back into parents' hands, similar to the school choice arguments we see. And really just opening a door that could very much be a slippery slope. I saw that bill in Iowa. We have Tyson here in Arkansas. We have lots of meat packing plants, and we're actually in a couple of our plants had some of those miners from the janitorial service, I guess, from up in Wisconsin, just the week this bill ran in the House.
Yeah. No, there's no, and of course they didn't care. But this is the thing that I've been saying is these child labor law changes aren't going to affect my kids. Because clearly my kids are I'm gonna advocate for them. I'm gonna fight for them, and they don't have to work. I don't need my children to go out into the workforce so we can keep a roof over our family's head. And I'm fortunate in that way, and a lot of us are. The majority of us are. I know this kind of legislation is going to harm the least of us. Me, when I was a kid, when I was 8 or 9 years old, growing up in a housing project, those are the kids that are going to be harmed by this, and that's the point. The cruelty seems to be the point in Republican policy, and this is it. We're going to continue to kick the downtrodden, the poor, and abuse them and exploit them. And this is another way that they're going to continue to do that. That's my thought. I'm curious yours.
I think you're right on, and I think that a lot of the bills we see coming out of states like Arkansas, these folks really seem to be legislating from a point of privilege, right? It wouldn't be you or I that's going to get exploited, probably, or your children or my children that would be exploited. It would be those in probably worse situations, worse economic situations, socioeconomic situations, and that seems to be what I find kind of a pattern. Whether it be we're talking about schools, or the workforce, or unemployment, the pattern has really been, kind of my predominantly white middle class family. This isn't a problem for us, so it won't be a problem for anyone else.
You're exactly right. But here's the thing that gets me is, I remember Tom DeLay. I'm sure you remember the former Speaker of the House, Tom DeLay, Republican from Texas, who famously said, if we could get rid of Roe and, we had those 40 million babies, we wouldn't need people from Mexico to come do our cheap labor. And this seems to me that in a time when, they've gotten Roe overturned, there's going to be a lot of children coming around, especially poor children. This seems like their cheap labor bill. As we're bringing jobs back from overseas, especially talking about bringing them back from China, this seems like we're going to be importing a lot of poverty labor jobs. And who better to do it with such small hands to do intricate work than the children of poor people? And this is, this is me looking down the road, and angrily so, and saying this is wrong and we should be stopping this instead of letting this stuff go by.
Right. Again, I of course completely agree with you.
I like that.
One of the things, one of our concerns we've been discussing is that along with this bill, the conglomeration of them all, if you look at the big picture and down the road, we've got a lot of different bills that really are gearing up high schools to train little worker bees and be ready to go into that workforce and go work just directly after high school. Not against it, but they're going more and more to, I'm going to train you and then send you to go work and give me the next group that are going to be working. And I had a conversation the other day. Why aren't we also, we're telling these kids, here's how to do an interview, here's how to write a resume, but we don't ever cover, here are your rights in a workplace. Let me make sure that, if we're going to educate you and encourage you to, go into the workplace, why don't we make sure and do you a solid that you're not taken advantage of because you're right?
No, you're spot on, right. But again, you brought up education, and I look at what's going on. Another coordinated effort, because I look at this attack on child labor as a coordinated effort across the country. Because you look at Ohio, Tennessee, Iowa, Arkansas, all of these places that are Wisconsin that are proposing legislation to weaken child labor laws, which again I thought we had decided decades ago. Also, the assault on public education. Your state, again, another state in a long line of states attacking public education for this idea that we're gonna have these, I guess, tax credits or vouchers or charter schools, or all of these privatization schemes that are meant to take money from the public schools that desperately need it and dish it out to wealthy people who already send their kids to private school, creating more poor working class folks. It just seems like a perfect storm of horrible. And your state right there in front of it. Sarah Huckabee came out with, we're going to pay teachers more, but we're going to screw things up. Tell me about the education bill that they've proposed and where we are in the process with that.
I believe it was signed today.
Oh, I must have missed that one.
I think it was signed this afternoon, so it will probably really hit the news tomorrow. But I saw Education Committee take a little break today for a bill signing. I'm assuming that's what it was for. Right. So one thing that the governor did, Sarah Sanders, is one of her first cabinet appointees was Jacob Olivia out of Florida. So if you look at what we're kind of aligned with, I see a lot of policy coming out of Florida into this administration because she brought their education person.
Yeah.
So you're seeing the privatization. They being not a whole lot of what I would say teacher and public input, but the governor and her entering administration have been working on this, they said, for 6 months. And they presented an omnibus bill. Like I know, an omnibus bill, there are some good things in there, right? That upping the pay is a good thing. But in order to get that up in pay, you're going to have to vote along with all of these policy changes. And there were days and days and days of testimony in committee on this bill, and I commend every teacher and superintendent that got involved and came to the Capitol to be heard. Unfortunately, it fell on some ears that it was already a done deal.
So I look at this, Jessica, and the sad reality is the moment we're in is, and I keep saying this, there's a move to repeal the 20th century. Education being a huge part of this, labor rights for children, unemployment insurance, still on the national level, attacks on Social Security and Medicare, and all down the line. And I fear where this leads us. And this is where a strong labor movement is so very important. And today, Senator Sanders convened a committee here in the Help Committee, brought some labor leaders in to talk about organizing. And your state is a no rights state, a so-called right to work state where workers have a much more difficult time to organize, and employers have so much power. Can you talk a little bit about some of the abuses? Because I've had some people go, well, no, the employers have their rights to view they don't abuse people. I say that these abuses have run rampant. They've gotten too far out of hand. And at some point, we've got to rein the kind of exploitation that we see in the workplace in. And it starts at the legislative level. So I'm curious, the conditions in Arkansas.
Regarding unemployment or
the right to organize? I mean, the idea that people join and form unions in a right to work state, which Arkansas is a right to work state, right?
Correct. We, along with Florida, unfortunately, were the first to enact it. Unfortunately, Rick, it's going to come down to really educating and informing our workforce and our students and our our citizens of Arkansas. The South, unlike so many of my partners and in Pennsylvania, so to say, like where you are, or New York, down here, your neighbor is not necessarily a union member. A lot of people don't know that unions exist in Arkansas because for so long, unions have really spread, and our strength and our power has spread by word of mouth. And, my uncle or my dad or my dad's brother, I come from a family of union members. Like, you just don't see that very often down here. So, so many people don't really understand the basics of your rights in a workplace. It's not something businesses tout down here.
Right. Now, the reason I bring it up, Jessica, is that, whether it's, child labor laws, whether it's unemployment insurance, whether it's education, the labor movement has been front and center in fighting for all of those things. The progress of the 20th century has the labor movement's, blood, sweat, and tears all over it. And to see it being destroyed systematically in state by state is angering, frustrating, and heartbreaking, all wrapped up into the same ball. My question is, how do we revive this? How do we get back to my grandparents' generation where working people understood the power and the need for organized labor and collective bargaining rights and community more than anything?
Right. I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of a silver lining type of person. I try to look for the good in everything. And
that's what I'm looking for.
Let me tell you. So I think that we are really in an important moment. I think COVID, and especially in places in the South or places that didn't know worker power like some others, people really began to see, my health insurance is tied to my job. If I don't have job, I don't have health insurance. Oh, you can just let me go. There were so many things that were brought to light during the pandemic that I think as we come back and it's a perfect disastrous storm. One of the reasons we see these child labor bills is we've got, record retirement out of the pandemic. We knew that we were having an aging workforce, and then the pandemic kind of gave it a swift kick forward, right? So we're having even more of a labor shortage in some industries. And here's our time to I feel shine. That pendulum is less on the business side of things and swinging toward the workers. I think it's up to us as workers and as labor leaders, and for people like you who get the good word out, to really take this moment and use it and move the labor movement forward in real way.
It's all about feeling the power of making lives better. And, I'm a living testament to the power of the union card that I carry in my wallet, having grown up in a housing project on the west side of Cleveland. And I have led a life that I could have never imagined as a kid. And it's all because I believe, a huge part of it, that union card that I want for other people. I'm not one of those people, I've gotten to a certain point and I'm going to kick the ladder over. I want everyone to have opportunity to make their lives better. And for me, that's the way we do it, and also the way we bring the country back together.
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned right to work earlier, and I mentioned silver linings. We've got to, and coming off the pandemic, if we can take this and show that with a union card, you also get a collective bargaining agreement in a state like Arkansas. If you don't have a contract, if you don't have a union and a collective bargaining agreement, you don't have a binding contract in this state.
Or in any state.
Right.
Yeah, every state's an at-will state unless you've got a collective bargaining agreement. And for me, that's one of the, sign me up. But Jessica, I appreciate the time. Great stuff. I hope you'll come back and share some more with us. I'm sure the attacks are going to be coming fast and furious with Sarah Huckabee there as the governor. So we'd love to have you come back and keep us informed on what's going on.
Absolutely, I will anytime. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Jessica Aker. She's the president of the AFL-CIO there in Arkansas. ArkansasAFL-CIO.org, the website, if you want to check out the work that they do. Going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1924. That was the day that tragedy struck at the Utah Fuel Company mine in Castlegate, Utah. The mine stood about 90 miles southeast of Salt Lake City. Coal mining began at Castlegate in 1888. On the fateful day of the explosion, at 8 in the morning, 2 violent blasts ripped through the number 2 mine. 20 minutes later, a third explosion went off. According to an investigation by the Bureau of Mines, the explosions inside the mine were extremely violent and reached all parts of the mine. 171 miners were killed instantly. Those who died reflected the diversity of those who worked in the mines. There were 49 Greeks, 22 Italians, 8 Japanese, 7 English, 6 Australian, 2 Scotch, 1 Belgian, and 76 Americans, including 2 African Americans. They left behind a combined total of 241 children and 25 pregnant wives. Rescue efforts were impeded by the poisonous gases and fire raging in the mine. Rescuers donned helmets to attempt to reach those below. One rescue leader, George Wilson, died from the carbon monoxide when his nosepiece separated from his helmet. It's believed the explosion occurred when one of the bosses attempted to relight the flame on his headlamp. At the time, he was investigating a pocket of built-up gas in the mine. The flame ignited the gas and built up coal dust. The previous shift had kicked up the dust, and it had not been adequately watered down. This contributed to the explosions. It took 9 days to recover all of the bodies of those who died. The families of those killed were provided about $64 a month by the company and the state of Utah for several years after the tragedy. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
This ought to make the right-wing crazy. President Biden's approval rating has ticked up a bit. He's up to 42%, the highest level since June. Inflation is easing. Uh-oh, that narrative. Things are bad in right-leaning world. And you want to talk about crazy? Kevin McCarthy handed the gavel over to Marjorie Trainwreck Green to make her the speaker pro tempore. Now, I had everybody going, oh, does this mean she's in line to be president? I'm like, no, that's not how that works. Please don't get all freaked out. Evidently, she's just there for the day. But it's kind of scary that she would hold the gavel, even to look at it. Also, again, with Republicans controlling Congress, some fun things going to happen. Jamie Raskin, the Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, put forth a resolution, simple resolution, denouncing white supremacy. Because he claims that, look, a lot of the rhetoric that you're hearing coming out of the members in Congress are a lot of the extreme MAGA stuff, a lot of the white supremacist rhetoric that you get, about the southern border and, replacement theory and all of this stuff. And they said, look, just want you to admit, you're not a white supremacist. Simple. It was very simple. It said, we, members of the Committee on Oversight and Accountability, together denounce white nationalism and white supremacy in all its forms, including the Great Replacement conspiracy theory. These hateful and dangerous ideologies have no place in the work of the United States Congress or committee. Who could be against that? Well, evidently everyone on the Republican side, because none of the 26 members of the House Republican Oversight Committee signed on to it. Not won. Now, interestingly enough, since we're talking about the House Oversight Committee, evidently some of the members of the House Oversight Committee will be visiting the January 6th criminals in jail. And what I love about this is, you know, a lot of those people, I'm sure, I guarantee it, while they're now crying and whining and complaining about how hard it is to be in jail, you know, they don't let me. You know, they were people who were saying, you know, jail's too easy on those people. They get to watch color cable TV, swimming pools, and lift weights all day. They're now seeing that jail isn't all it was cracked up to be, or so they thought. Now, here's some scary stuff. You got Congress not signing on to a resolution saying that they're against white supremacy. You've got them, you know, going, hey, we're going to go visit some white supremacists and crazy people. And a group thought this group, the Boogaloo Boys, a white supremacist group, I find interesting, spelled B-O-I-S, which I always thought was part of the LGBTQ community name thing. Interesting. But thought dead. Thought it was over. Thought they were done. Thought they were sued out of existence. Evidently, there's a resurgence, and they're planning a comeback right around the time that I guess Trump and the Republicans start pushing for 2024. So that ought to be fun. And finally, this hour, the word woke, because Republicans are throwing that around as anything bad. And look, I'm not the mayor of Wokistan, not against it, but evidently a USA Today poll says that the word woke, the American people aren't as opposed to as the Republicans think. In fact, you know, 56% of people actually favor what woke means, see it as positive. Uh-oh. Quick break. Right back.
The has reached the shore.
World governments reach historic deal to protect the high seas. France to cover parking lots with solar panels. Plus, another Norfolk Southern train derails in Ohio.
Has anyone told the Republicans to be upset about it yet? All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com.
KCAA Loma Linda. The Legacy KCAA 1050 AM and Express 106.5 FM.
Open for takeout and delivery, El Tapiac Mexican food restaurant in the Tri-City Center of Redlands is back. Their entire family is on hand to serve up their delicious burritos, machaca, chorizo, huevos rancheros, steak and eggs, just part of their mouth-watering great food. Since 1531, people have marveled at the miracle of El Tapiac, and now you can marvel at the great food the Lugo family has been serving up for over 2 decades, nestled quietly in the corner of the Tri-City Center shopping mall next to Burlington Coat Factory. Support them. They can't wait to serve you some of their delectable, authentic, south-of-the-border Mexican fare at great prices, served up with love. Support the area's best-loved Mexican food restaurant in these tough times. Order up a tasty meal on the phone for delivery or takeout for breakfast, lunch, or dinner from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Call 909-307-0017. That's 909-307-0017. Or Google El Tapiac Redlands and treat yourself.
The message of Brother Stair lives on here in Southern California on KCAA, Monday through Friday from 1 to 5 a.m. Hear the worldwide broadcast of the Overcomer Ministry from the Faith Cathedral Fellowship. Call for prayer requests or to make a donation at area 843-599-1215, beginning at 1 a.m. Monday through Friday. Hear it here on KCAA, AM and FM.
You're listening to the Tahibo Tea Club radio show, hosted by Milan Vukovic, founder of the Tahibo Tea Club.
Welcome to the Tahibo Tea Club Radio Hour. My name is Milan Vukovic. I'm the founder of the Tahibo Tea Club. Without my father, John Vukovic, there would be no Tahibo Tea Club. My father was diagnosed with colon cancer that had spread to the pancreas in 1998 at the age of 86. He started receiving treatment at the Houston Medical Center, which is the biggest medical center in the world, bigger than Boston. Because the size of the tumor on my father's pancreas was the size of a half a brick, I was told that there wasn't anything they could do for my father and that I needed to put my father's affairs in order since he had about 2 months to live. So, of course, I started planning a funeral. I called our friends and family and told them how grave the situation was and told them that if they wanted to see Dad, they only had a couple of months and they might want to do so now. One of the families that came to pay their last respects to my father came and brought Tahibo tea with them. They said Tahibo tea cured their brother from cancer. I looked at them incredulous, as if they were Martians or something. I mean, my dad was getting treated at the Houston Medical Center, and no one was saying anything other than to plan a funeral, and these people were telling me that the tea's going to cure my dad? But of course, I was polite to the people since they came to pay their respects. In any event, after they left, I cooked up the tea, and my father figured if he had 2 months to live, what's the difference if he's drinking the tea or water? He has to drink something anyway. So he's drinking the tea, and 2 months later, when they put him on a CAT scan machine, they thought their CAT scan machine was broken because they couldn't find a tumor on his pancreas that used to be the size of a half a brick. So they said to my father, you know, the hospital right next door here at the medical center also has a CAT scan machine. Since you already drank the contrast dye, we'll phone them and you can walk over and they'll take a picture so you don't have to come back and do it all over again next week when we get our machine fixed. So my father walked next door. They took a picture. They couldn't find any cancer either. My father is now 86 years old. He's been cancer-free for over 20 years. And not only is he cancer-free, he's in such good health, he takes care of my garden and even mows my lawn. I mean, I'd be embarrassed about it if he didn't enjoy doing it, and I know it's good for him. Our customers always get a kick out of it when they ask me how my dad's doing, and I tell them as long as he's mowing my lawn, he must be doing pretty good. The tea's certainly been a blessing in my family's life, and God willing, our tea will have the same benefits for you, your family and friends, as it has for mine and so many others. Not a week goes by that someone doesn't call in with a truly miraculous recovery. Bone cancer, brain cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, mesothelioma, leukemia, diabetes, you name it. And not a day goes by that someone doesn't call in with some type of a success, whether it's just beating toenail fungus. Well, toenail fungus may not be imminently life-threatening, but if you have it, you don't like it. The Tahibo tree is an amazing tree. It never gets sick, never gets infected, and never gets infested. As a result, the highest potency Tahibo comes from the inner bark of the tree where the arterial and vein system, called the xylem and the phloem, in the tree reside, which brings nutrients to the rest of the tree. And that's why we only harvest mature trees over 40 years old in the rainforest of Brazil. The harvest method we use is to semi-strip some outer bark to get to the inner bark without cutting down the tree and allowing the tree to heal itself so they can be harvested again. It's also the only tree in the world that fungus doesn't grow on. So as a result, it naturally has antifungal, anti-infection, antiviral, antibacterial, anti-inflammation, and anti-parasite properties. These benefits go a long way to helping our immune system contend with a lot of things it normally has to contend with on a daily basis. Parasites would be something like stomach problems. Inflammation would be something like rheumatoid arthritis. Infection would be any infection from a tooth infection to a bladder infection. Viral would be something like herpes. Bacteria would be something like gum disease or stomach bacteria. And fungus would be something like toenail fungus or candida. But maybe more importantly, what the tea does is build the red corpuscles in the blood which carry oxygen to our organs and cells. Our organs and cells need oxygen to regenerate themselves. Our immune system needs oxygen to develop, and cancer happens to die on oxygen. So the tea is great for healthy people because it helps regenerate new cells. Everything from the cells in our skin so we look better to the cells in our organs so they function properly. And it can truly be miraculous for somebody fighting a potentially life-threatening disease such as diabetes or cancer. In future programs, we'll discuss Tahibo tea versus AIDS, anemia, arthritis, asthma, bronchitis, other types of cancers, colitis, diabetes, diverticulitis, eczema, fungus, gastritis, gonorrhea, gout, HIV, impotence, infections, leukemia, lupus, Parkinson's, prostatitis, pyorrhea, rheumatism, ringworm, ulcers, virus, and yeast infections. One time a customer asked me, he said, boy, it sounds like the tea helps with everything. It does really help with a lot of different things, but for some things, for example, with the bones, calcium helps with the bones. The Tahibo helps with a lot of different things, but you need some other things also for a healthy diet. I'd like to talk a little about the proper preparation directions for Tahibo tea to be effective. Even though we call it tea, what you're actually preparing when you make it properly is a decoction. A decoction is just a fancy word for what our forefathers used to make when they used to take a root and cook it in order to release its beneficial properties. It's easy, but you don't steep it in hot water like regular leaf tea, but rather cook it like spaghetti. I'll tell you how easy it is to make just so you don't think you'll need a degree in physics, but you don't have to remember any of this because the directions, of course, are on the packages as well as in the literature you automatically receive with your order. You take a pot of water, bring it to a boil. Once the water is boiling, you toss in a tablespoon of tea for every 2 cups of boiling water. Cook it on high for 5 minutes, reduce the heat, and cook on simmer for an additional 15 minutes. Since our tea comes from the only tree in the world that fungus doesn't grow on, you can make a whole big batch, 10 or 20 cups at a time, leave it in the pot on the stove, and it'll stay good for 4 days without refrigeration. Put it in the fridge, and it'll stay good for 8 days with refrigeration, and you can drink it hot, room temperature, cold, or iced. The tea has a mild, pleasant flavor, kind of halfway between Lipton tea and green tea, but a little bit sweeter than either one of those. Our tea tastes so good that 95% of our customers drink it straight without putting anything else in it. Even teenagers drink it straight. So, you know it must taste pretty good. You can, however, add anything you want to the tea after you prepare it, such as lemon, for example. About the only thing we don't recommend to add to the tea is sugar. Not because it has any contraindications with our tea, but because sugar feeds virtually everything bad in our body, from fungus to diabetes to cancer. The other thing you can do to change the flavor and have some fun while cooking the tea, you can take any old fruit that you have on hand, like an apple, a pear, a peach, mango, whatever it is, slice it up, or take blueberries and crush them up and toss them into the boiling water at the same time you're tossing the tea in, and cook it with the tea. You can also take ginger or a cinnamon stick and cook it with the tea. And because the tea naturally has such a mild flavor, you'll immediately change the flavor to the fruit that you're using. This is especially useful when you're giving the tea to a child to drink, because an 8-year-old has not acquired a taste for any kind of tea, regardless how mild it tastes. Tahibo tea has no contraindications with any medications, so it can be taken on an empty stomach, a full stomach, with medications or without medications, and with or without other therapies. It also has no caffeine, so it can be drank all day and all night. In my family, we all drink it like water all day, every day. I only drink water 3 or 4 times a week when I get tired of drinking a tea.
Don't go away. We'll be right back with Milan and more from the Tahibo Tea Club radio show in just a minute. But for now, here's a word from our sponsors.
You're listening to the Tahibo Tea Club radio show. All packaging is in 1 pound packages. A 1 pound package of tea is $49.95, and that includes shipping.
And 1 pound makes 300 8-ounce cups or glasses of tea. That's the equivalent of 12 cents a glass to make. So even if you're drinking 8 glasses a day, that's 96 cents a day to at least give yourself the opportunity for success. All orders ship immediately the same day. Orders in Los Angeles, where we're located, arrive in 1 day. Orders everywhere else arrive in 2 days. Tahibo tea is great for healthy people because it helps regenerate cells. Everything from the cells in our skin so we look better to the cells in our organs so they function properly. And it can truly be miraculous for someone fighting a potentially life-threatening disease such as an infection, diabetes, or cancer. In Milan Vukovic's family, everyone drinks it every day like water, from his 20-year-old son to his parents, who are both now 86. For more information about Tahibo tea or to order, please visit our website, www.tahiboteaclub.com. Tahibo is spelled T like Tom, A-H-E-E-B like boy. Oh, that's Tahibo, and then continue with the word tea and then the word club. So the complete site is www.tahiboteaclub.com, or call today at 818-610-8088. That's 818-610-8088. 8088. LA offices open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Saturday, California time. That's area code 818-610-8088.
Tahibo Tea Club's original Pure Pau Arco Super Tea comes from the only tree in the world that fungus does not grow on. As a result, it naturally has antifungal, anti-infection, antiviral, antibacterial, anti-inflammation, and anti-parasite properties. So the tea is great for healthy people because it helps build the immune system, and it can truly be miraculous for someone fighting a potentially life-threatening disease due to an infection, diabetes, or cancer. The tea is also organic and naturally caffeine-free. A 1-pound package of tea is $49.95, which includes shipping. To order, please visit TahiboTeaClub.com. Tahibo is spelled T like Tom, A-H-E-E-B like boy, O, then continue with the word tea and then the word club. The complete website is TahiboTeaClub.com or call us at 818-610-8088, Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. California time. That's 818-610-8088, TahiboTeaClub.com.
Welcome back. This is Milan Vukovic, founder of the Tahibo Tea Club. My father's case was a case of colon cancer that had metastasized to the pancreas. I'd like to tell you about another cancer case about a man from Chicago. In 2009, he was diagnosed with brain cancer, specifically lymphoma of the brain. They immediately started chemo and radiation treatments, but his cancer kept getting worse. The chemo and radiation were not working for him, and they were making him sicker by the day because they're not easy treatments. By January 2010, he was literally on his deathbed. A friend of his who had heard about the tea called us and said, go ahead and send the tea to him in Chicago, even though it's probably too late for our friend, but for $34.95, it's certainly worth a try. So we went ahead, sent the tea to him in Chicago. We didn't hear from anyone until about 5 months later, this lady from Texas called to order the tea. We asked her how she heard about the tea, and she said, you know, my husband and I are originally from Chicago, and about 5 months ago when we were back visiting, our good friend Nick was dying from brain cancer. He was in such bad shape that my husband and I looked at each other and thought he was going to pass away that week, so we might as well stay in Chicago so we don't have to come back again the next week for a funeral. Well, Nick got the tea about that time and started drinking it, and he started getting a little bit stronger. My husband and I went back to Texas, and now 5 months later, Nick is visiting us. He looks better than you or I, so whatever it is that he's drinking, we want to drink too. I want to tell you that Nick at that time was 60 years old, and once he beat the cancer, he was feeling so good he got bored staying at home, so he went back to work full-time, and he's been cancer-free and in good health now for over 8 years and still continues to work full-time. I want to shift gears now and talk about diabetes. Oftentimes I get the question, how long does it take for the tea to work? If the tea is going to help, it's going to work rather quickly. In my father's case, it eradicated the tumor in exactly 2 months. In Nick's case with the brain cancer, it was about 3 to 4 months. Now, with diabetes and with all of the conditions with the tea, there's a healing process that's involved. Now, with diabetes, it's very easy to tell that the tea is working. Let's say, for example, if a diabetic is taking on average 40 units of insulin daily. They continue to take their insulin and they start drinking a tea. Since they're measuring the blood sugar on a daily basis to know whether to take 35 units or 40 units or 45 units of insulin, which makes a big difference, they'll notice typically that in 2 weeks, instead of needing 40 units of insulin, they only need 30 units of insulin. In 4 weeks, they'll notice they only need 20 units of insulin. In 6 weeks, they'll only need 10 units of insulin. And in 2 months, they won't need insulin at all. So there's a healing process involved because the tea helps the body to heal itself. And with different conditions, there's different healing times that are involved. With infections, for example, a tooth infection, you can get rid of faster than you can with penicillin. You can get rid of a tooth infection in a week. And what happens with a tooth infection is you start drinking a tea. Let's say you have a tooth infection and your head is throbbing like in a cartoons, like a bomb that's about to explode. You take a drink of the tea, you hold it in your mouth for 2 minutes, the pain will immediately go away. You can't even get rid of the pain that quickly with a Vicodin. Now, if you stop drinking the tea at that point, you haven't knocked out enough bacteria, so the pain will come back in about 30 minutes. but you take another drink in about 30 minutes. If you take a drink of the tea, let's say 1 glass an hour for 4 hours, you'll completely get rid of the pain. But you haven't still knocked out all the bacteria, so if at that point you stop drinking the tea, the pain will come back in about 3 days. So you need to continuously drink the tea for 1 week in order to get rid of the pain. Kind of like when you go to a dentist and the dentist says, here's the penicillin, take 2 a day. Even though you're going to feel great in a day, you have to drink it for 10 days or so in order to completely knock out the bacteria. Same thing with the tea. You need to completely drink the tea until you knock out the bacteria, which typically in case of a tooth infection takes about a week to 10 days. In other infections, it takes a little bit longer. So, for example, with a bladder infection or a urinary tract infection, it's common to take about 2 weeks to completely get rid of the infection, but you get relief like within 24 hours so that you don't have the pain associated. Now, talking about urinary tract infections, there are folks that get chronic urinary tract infections. And what happens is they go to the doctor gives them antibiotics, they drink the antibiotics for 2 weeks, and the infection goes away. A month later, the infection comes back, they go back to the doctor to get some more antibiotics, and in 2 weeks the pain goes away. And what happens is they keep cycling on and off the antibiotics, which obviously is not a good thing to do, on an ongoing regular basis. On the other hand, they could just drink the tea. The tea is great for them for a lot of other health benefits as well. In 2 weeks, they'll be rid of their urinary tract infection, and they won't get the infection back.
You're listening to the Taheebo Tea Club radio show. All packaging is in 1 pound packages. A 1 pound package of tea is $49.95, and that includes shipping.
And 1 pound makes 308 ounce cups or glasses of tea. That's the equivalent of 12 cents a glass.